There's a specific promise that crime thriller series make the moment you press play. Urgency, momentum, the feeling that every scene is pushing towards something explosive. Steel understands that promise on paper, and for a brief moment, it even delivers on it. But the longer the series runs, the more that energy quietly drains away. From the opening episode, Steel positions itself as a high-stakes crime thriller built around deception, obsession, and moral compromise. The setup works. A massive financial crime. Billions in pension funds quietly siphoned into offshore accounts. A system exposed. A single, ordinary woman caught in the middle. On its best days, the show knows exactly how tense that scenario should feel. Sophie Turner plays Zara Dunne, a low-paid office worker who unexpectedly becomes a key witness in the largest theft case of her life. Zara isn't a detective. She isn't trained for danger. She's just someone who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that vulnerability is what initially makes her compelling. The series quickly pivots, though, toward a more familiar structure. The real narrative focus settles on Chief Inspector Reese Kovac, played by Jacob Fortune Lloyd, as he tries to untangle what truly happened after Zara's fateful encounter with the criminals behind the theft. On paper, this dual perspective should work. Witness and investigator, fear and control, chaos and order. The first episode captures that balance surprisingly well. There's urgency, there's tension. The criminals feel dangerous and intelligent. The mystery feels alive. You can sense the potential for a tightly wound 6-episode story that moves with purpose. And then the pace collapses. Despite being a short season, Steel struggles with consistency almost immediately after its opening hour. Each subsequent episode feels slower than the last, as if the story is constantly applying the brakes instead of accelerating. What should feel like mounting pressure instead turns into a cautious walk toward an ending that the show never quite earns. This is especially frustrating because limited series often thrive on clarity. A defined beginning, a steady escalation, a conclusion that feels inevitable. Steel never finds that rhythm. It drifts. Scenes linger longer than they should. Subplots feel underdeveloped, and by the midpoint, the urgency that initially pulled me in had noticeably faded. One of the most surprising missteps is how the show handles its criminals. In crime thrillers, villains aren't just obstacles. They're engines. They generate tension. They challenge authority. They force the detectives to adapt. Steel introduces criminals who feel genuinely intriguing, then systematically pushes them into the background to preserve mystery. Instead of feeling ominous, they begin to feel distant. As a result, the suspense flattens. The series becomes more about waiting for reveals than actively engaging with danger. And when those reveals finally arrive, they struggle to land with the impact the story clearly wants. That said, the show isn't without strengths. Sophie Turner is the most consistent one. Her performance as Zara adds emotional texture to material that often feels underwritten. She brings anxiety, confusion, and quiet resilience to the role, making Zara's fear feel grounded rather than theatrical. Even when the plot slows, Turner keeps her character engaging. You believe the pressure is wearing her down. You believe the cost of being involved in something far bigger than herself. The dynamic between Zara and Kovac also provides some of the show's strongest moments. Their relationship carries an underlying tension that never fully resolves, and those scenes crackle more than most. There's an unspoken question hovering between them about trust, responsibility, and exploitation. Zara's relationship with her boyfriend and co-worker Luke adds another layer. Those moments, while limited, offer glimpses of genuine emotional stakes. They remind us of what Zara stands to lose, not just physically, but personally. When Steel works, it's usually in these quieter character-driven interactions. Another area where the show deserves credit is its willingness to explore moral gray zones. Rather than presenting clean divisions between right and wrong, Steel repeatedly complicates its characters' decisions. Good intentions led to bad outcomes. Self-preservation clashes with justice. That ambiguity is one of the series' more thoughtful elements. Unfortunately, the execution never fully matches the ambition. The show wants to be a psychological thriller. It wants to interrogate guilt, grief, paranoia, and obsession. And while those themes are present, they're often diluted by uneven pacing and tonal inconsistency. The series constantly hints at depth without fully committing to it. By the time the story reaches its conclusion, the impact feels muted. The ending isn't necessarily bad, but it doesn't justify the journey either. It's the kind of finale that makes more sense the longer you think about it, rather than one that hits immediately. And in a genre built on momentum, that's a problem. Action-wise, Steel performs better. The show's action sequences are competently staged and clearly choreographed. When violence erupts, it feels controlled and purposeful. These moments briefly reignite the tension the series so often lacks. The cast commits physically, and those scenes stand out as some of the most engaging parts of the season. But action alone can't carry a crime thriller. Steel ultimately feels more comfortable as a drama with crime elements than as a full-fledged crime thriller. Its strongest moments come from character interactions rather than investigation or suspense. That choice isn't inherently wrong, but it clashes with the expectations the series sets early on. It doesn't reinvent the genre. It doesn't push boundaries, and even when it follows familiar patterns, it does so without enough urgency to make them feel fresh. Still, it's not a total misfire. Sophie Turner clearly gives the role her full commitment, and the supporting cast holds their own. There's effort here, there's intention, there's even promise, but promise alone isn't enough to sustain a thriller. Steel aims high, stumbles often, and lands somewhere in the middle. Watchable, occasionally engaging, rarely thrilling. It's the kind of series you finish more out of curiosity than excitement. And in a genre built on adrenaline, that's a missed opportunity. Stay sharp, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.